Hi, Sai and Sai here for Music Radar. Today our very special guest upon the table is
Ableton Move.
So Sai, this is a funny looking push because it's not a push in any shape or form. What is it?
So yeah, as you say, it kind of looks a little bit like Push. So Ableton Push, as you probably know, is their big controller, live controller as of last year, which we featured and you can see in the link below. As of last year, they also brought out a standalone version with its own processor, running a version of Live inside Push. And so obviously this looks kind of like a mini version of that, and it kind of is.
Right.
So I'll tell you the way it kind of is a bit like Push. So Move, much like Push, it can control Ableton Live. You can plug it into a laptop, use it as a controller for Live. It can also run in standalone mode. As you can see, it's not plugged into anything. It's got its own little built-in battery. It's got its own little processor inside, and it is running some instruments and effects that are based on those found in Ableton Live.
Cool.
So in that way, it's kind of like a mini Push.
Yeah.
In another important way, it's kind of not.
Right.
So actually, to understand what Ableton Move is, it's worth going back to, remember that a little while ago, Ableton brought out its first iOS app, something called Note.
Yes.
Which again, we spoke about at the time, we'll link to below this video. But Ableton Note is a little kind of sketch pad for starting ideas on your phone or an iPad that you can then take to Live to finish off. So it kind of offers a kind of this basic little version of Live with simplified versions of the kind of synths and drums.
Yeah.
What Move actually is, rather than being a mini Push, it's closer to effectively being a hardware version of Ableton Note.
Oh, right.
Rather than me go through exactly what this is, we last week I caught up with Johannes, who's the head of product at for Move at Ableton.
Yeah.
And I spoke to him a little bit to get some more insight about what this actually is and what it does. So let's let him
take it away.
So I'm with Johannes, who's the head of product for Ableton Move. So Johannes, give us a bit of a background behind Move. So let's start at why was this created? Like, what was the thought process behind making a device like this?
There's a couple of things that came together. So one aspect is we like to think about creative journeys. And with Move, we wanted to make something that's really easy to pick up, almost like a traditional instrument, so you can create wherever, whenever, and be really spontaneous for music making. Yeah.
So what sort of user did you guys have in mind when creating this? Because obviously there's a lot of different types of musicians and types of genres created with Live these days. How did you narrow that down to a specific person that you were trying to design a device for?
So we're actually coming from different ends. So we see Move as something that a prolific producer might use. Someone who creates a lot, but they want to take this and maybe go into a different context. Take it outside, take it on the studio couch, and just come up with different ideas. Where it's also about limitations. So we talk to a lot of artists and say, hey, sometimes it's good to embrace limitations to come up with something new. So it's really for those people, but also because it's quite easy to get into, and we really made sure the learning curve is fine. It's also for someone who maybe is just starting out or coming from a different background, like a band musician, instrumentalist, or DJ, and maybe looked at Live and Push and it's like, ooh, it's quite complex. So here's something that they can maybe ease into music production as well.
So it's interesting you mentioned limitations, because obviously there's quite a few interesting things that you can do with Move, but there's also things like the fact that you've only got one output, and compared to something like Push, which is obviously designed for a lot of flexibility, there's obviously things that you can and can't do with Move. How did you narrow down which of Live's features you wanted in here? Was there like a long list of things that you kind of then decided, no, we don't need that, or we do want this?
Absolutely. I mean, there's certain essentials you want to provide. I mean, there's classics like having a session view that you can launch clips, but then also having these different instrument layouts to play drums, to play melodies. So that was kind of one of the starting points. Something else that played a big role was actually developing it alongside Note, our iOS app. So I have that over here. Maybe some of you know that. So we were kind of conceiving these from the ground up together as kind of more simple tools for spontaneous idea creation. And what you get here is a little system that you can start ideas with, but on the other side we have Live and Push. So you can take what you have here into Live and Push, and I kind of see it like this is your sketchbook, and then you get the full canvas in Live and Push where you get all the colors and the rich tapestry, right, of sounds. So you can really dive in over there. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what tools from Live are actually kind of inside this. So obviously you've got drums, and you've got instruments, and there's some effects. What's powering those then?
So under the hood we have a couple of like Ableton instruments and effects. So we have Drift in here, that's the new synth, Wavetable, the new drum sampler that comes with Live 12.1, and then a couple of effects like reverb, delay, saturator, compressor, and again that's the same technology that powers Note. So you can really, all of these things are quite compatible between those two.
In terms of what's actually under the hood there, kind of, can you tell us a bit about is it a kind of Linux operating system, kind of the same as Push?
So there's some differences. So Push runs on an Intel module, but this has an ARM processor. So it's kind of new software, custom built for this environment. ARM processor. There's a battery inside. We even have small speakers, and the foundation is like a custom Linux operating system.
And so are the presets, do they kind of line up with ones that are available in Live, or are they different ones that have been developed?
So we developed a specific core library for Move and Note together. So they get the same sounds. Of course, you can load all these sounds in Live and seamlessly take them over. I think what we do now is actually integrating all the sounds we did here into Live as well. But I think they've been designed a bit differently for really being hands-on, quick to create with. There's a lot of really good sounding basic sounds that you can create from any genre, whether it's your 303 bass line, 808 kit, or Reese bass. Like, it's all in here, and you can just use it as a starting point quickly.
So tell me a little bit about the continuity between this and Live. So obviously, as you've mentioned, the workflow is very much the idea of this being a kind of sketchpad that then kind of works with the DAW. But how are those two fitting together? How can I take something that I've made on this to Live, and is there any ability to kind of take things from Live back into this as well?
So, Move has Wi-Fi built in, which is quite nice, and also Ableton Cloud is built in. So with Ableton Cloud, you can, bring your sets back to Note, but you can also bring them into Live, and then you open them up, you can see all your instruments and effects, the MIDI clips, and then you can, go for it and just do your sound design. To go to Live, it's a one-way direction. So you bring it in Live, but then once you start adding things, effects, you can't bring it back because Live is obviously a much, much bigger set of technology, and then we only have a subset in here. What we allow is building presets in Live for drum kits. So you can, build your favorite drum kits, use your favorite samples, bring them onto Move, and also drift presets. So we are working on that at the moment. So one more thing with Cloud, you can also bring this into Push standalone. We're working on that right now. So all of it is seamless, wireless, pretty quick.
Tell me a little bit about the sampling capabilities on this. What can I record from, and what format are those samples, and how much space is there to record and things?
So we made sampling really intuitive. So you have this direct sampling button, so you can directly sample into a pad. You can use internal resampling, but you can also use the microphone that's built in here. You have a line input for sampling from your phone or synthesizers. And in terms of space, so Move has an internal storage of 64 gigabyte. I think you can use 50 of that for your own samples. So there's a lot of recording time. And I think each sample can take up to 4 minutes of stereo sound. So there's a lot you can do with that.
Cool. And so just finally, tell us a little bit about, because we've discussed this as a standalone thing, which is clearly were the main appealing points about it, but then it can work as a controller for Ableton Live as well. So tell me what it can do if we're not running it as a standalone device.
Cool. Move supports a control live mode. You can go to that here. So we don't have Live connected at the moment. So let's just go back here. So we can really, really quickly switch between these modes. So if you're using Live, what you get is all the workflow essentials that you also have a Move, like playing drums like this. You get this really nice drum machine-like sequencer for live, which is really tactile and hands-on. It's really fun. You can tweak your sounds in live and launch clips in session view. So you really get all the basics. It won't do everything that like Push does, but here the idea is we still assume that you're going to be doing sound design, browsing with the mouse.
Yep.
But you get just a very nice hands-on portable thing to take with you. And it's quite nice in terms of the size, so you can travel with you. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so that's a very in-depth view of what Move is all about. What I want to know though, Si, is what you think about it. What's your good bits and bad bits?
Yeah, so I've been lucky to have my hands on one of these for a few months now. So I've been playing around with it, took it on holiday a few weeks ago because it's obviously designed that you can kind of mess around with it away from the studio and away from live and then take things back. So I had quite a chance to get pretty familiar with Move.
Yeah.
What I will say is the things that Move does, it does really well.
Right.
So in that kind of sketchpad way, obviously you've got loads of drum, like kind of very good quality drum presets, much like Note. You've got the kind of acoustic drums, the electric drums, hybrid drums. You've got a really nice mix of different kind of synth sounds, bass sounds, mallets, some more kind of weird, some string sounds, some weird synth sounds, some effects, things like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good presets in there, and in that way it makes a really good, neat little sketch pad for starting ideas. It's also got a bit of depth, more than you would initially see and more than we maybe touched on in that interview.
Yeah.
So there's some things that once you kind of get past the initial stage of just like playing around with some simple loops and things, there's some cool little workarounds you can do. One of my favourite things about it is the fact that you can, well, the sampling on it is really easy to use. Let me go on to the drum thing, press the record button here, hit any pad, and we can sample either from the built-in mic or from the input. But actually, probably the most fun thing about this is that you can resample the output itself.
Oh, right, okay.
So as I was saying, it's kind of, there is a lot of restrictions on what this can do. You've got these 4 instrument slots, which is a maximum. It's a hard maximum. You can't really go beyond that. But what you can do is you can resample, and you can sample to say, so each drum rack, you've got like 16 pads.
Yeah.
So you can resample the output, throw it into one of those pads, and then
Bounce
suddenly
it all
you can kind of bounce bits down.
Yeah.
It's not the most flexible system. I mean, the sample editing things is very limited.
Yeah.
There's no kind of sample slicing, for example.
Right. That stuff's designed to go back into Ableton with.
Yeah, but it does mean that there's some cool little workarounds you can do with this. There's a lot of fun to be had with, for anyone who's not used the drum sampler, which this relies on, you've got these playback effects, which are really fun for doing things like the kind of granular stretching, looping, ring modulation.
Yeah, cool.
And so with that, you can actually, although on the surface level, it kind of looks like you can only really do sort of preset-y things with this, you can actually like record your own sounds, resample your own sounds, automate those effects and get some really kind of cool and weird things going on. And actually, I found working around those limitations is some of the kind of most fun you can have with Move. It also fixes a few of the things that I kind of struggle with Ableton Note. So when we reviewed Note, and Note has been updated quite a few times since then, but what I still feel about Note is that like because you can't really sequence in it very easily. It relies too much on like capture. It doesn't work very well with Bluetooth headphones, so I've ended up kind of bouncing off it quite a bit. This fixes quite a lot of that simply by letting you kind of properly get hands-on with those kind of sketchpad ideas. And this little button sequencer down the bottom here is really nice because it means you've got the kind of step sequencing and you've got the ability to play stuff and just capture it.
Yeah.
So that is really cool.
Wicked.
But, so there's
Always a caveat.
always a caveat.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily criticisms that I have with Move, but
Right.
it's worth being aware of what it isn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as we spoke about in the interview, there is obviously certain features that are included here and certain features which have been consciously avoided or omitted or removed.
Yeah.
And so while Move is a great sketch pad, what it very much isn't is something, for example, it does not make a good live performance tool because you've just got, if you look, we've only got the one little headphone output there. So, you know, there's no ability to, for example, like monitor things or anything. It's not something you could conceivably really build a live show around or anything like that.
Right.
Also, just that general sketchpad workflow kind of won't suit every kind of live user.
Yeah.
It is really handy for if you're someone who, you know, will load up a preset drum rack, or even if it's maybe your own samples, or kind of load up a kind of a classic bass line and sketch out ideas in Ableton like that. If, for example, you prefer to run things through a ton of effects, or you're someone who likes to work with loads of audio, I mean, while you can record audio into this, it's not really geared up for that kind of workflow so much.
Right.
So I think for some people, this will be a kind of game-changing ideas machine.
Yeah.
For some people, it just won't work, and it won't be something that really fits into the way they work. And so it's probably worth, you know, either taking one for a test drive if you can at a music shop, or at least kind of watching lots of videos like these and properly reading the manual to work out what it can and can't do if you're considering picking one up. So something else that I am going to say about this, and actually it interested me when I spoke to Johannes from Ableton the other day, that they kind of seem to gloss over, or not gloss over, but don't focus on the fact that this can control live itself.
Right.
I mean, obviously, all the talk in the launch things and every time I've spoken to Ableton has been very much about the standalone capabilities, which are great. But actually, for me, a big part of the appeal of this is the fact that it's a really convenient little controller for Ableton Live.
Yeah.
Like the fact that it's, you know, it's small, it's self-contained. You can just take your lead out with your laptop, stick it in a bag in the way that, you know, push, which is quite bulky.
Yeah,
you can't really do, like, even compared to like a lot of things like launch pads and things, this is quite small and convenient. Plug it into Live, you've obviously got clip launching, you've got the ability to play things with the pads, you've got these rotaries which give you control over your kind of macros, your top level things of most devices. Then you can use the step sequencer as well. It's not like a properly deep controller in the way that sort of pushes. You can't really do things like, you know, browsing, you can't do clip and deeper MIDI editing and things like that.
Sure.
But just for the ability to kind of just get hands-on, it's a really neat little device. So I would say at the price, which is kind of just under the £500, $500 mark, it's not kind of probably worth buying it just for the controller capabilities alone.
Yeah.
But it does really add to the appeal for me if you're kind of like the idea of the standalone thing, but then also you might use it in the studio or kind of as a second controller or something like that.
Yeah, sure. So does Move for you kind of work as a tool to entice new users into the live ecosystem? So would you say for like beginners, maybe this is a good way in? Or is it not
Possibly.
really?
As I said, I kind of see this suiting most people who have an established live workflow who like the idea of a sketchpad thing.
Yeah.
So when it comes to certain things, there are other devices that work better than Move. So what I mean when I say
Right.
that is like, if you're after, for example, your first bit of hardware and you want something standalone that works as a sketchpad, but maybe you can use in live performances and kind of send MIDI out or something.
Yeah.
Something like Novation Circuit, like Circuit Track, is still
Yeah.
a better purchase and kind of offers better value.
Half the price, less than half the price.
And similarly, if you just want a controller, if you're just happy to use a controller with live,
Right.
you could still get a lot more functionality for your money from something like Novation's Launchpad range,
Right, yeah, of
or
course.
the kind of Akai, the
APCs.
most recent APCs,
Yeah.
which are really good and flexible controllers and better value for money if you're not interested in the standalone things.
Yes.
So I don't know whether this is necessarily going to entice people into the live ecosystem, or even necessarily if it's going to kind of radically change the way people work.
Right.
But I think for a certain type of user, this could be a kind of an absolute game changer and a
Sure.
real inspiration machine.
Yeah. Well, clearly they've done the numbers, so they've worked out, well, this will, they're going to shift a few of these.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
if you're looking at this and you've kind of seen the demos and you're thinking, oh, well, I could sketch out tracks, so that would be really fun to play around with, then you'll probably be happy with the things that it can do. Other than, as I've said, a few little omissions, but a lot of things that will probably be ironed out in firmware updates.
Yeah,
There's a couple
okay.
of things that I know are coming. One thing, which is still in the kind of experimental feature stage at the time that we're recording this, is the fact that you can prep drum racks and drift presets within Live and then port those over to this.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So you can basically create your own synth and drum presets, which is really handy.
Yeah.
It's worth saying as well, which we touched on in the interview, but the continuity, as Ableton call it, which is kind of how well this works with the desktop version
Yeah.
of Live and Note and things, is excellent.
Yeah.
It's really easy
Great.
to link it up. It's really easy to bring projects across. It's very easy to load your own samples into this. It's got a good size sample memory, so that's really handy. That's really
Yeah.
useful. So what it does excellently. It's a really nicely designed bit of hardware. I think it's good value for what it does as well.
Yeah.
Whether that suits you will entirely come down to you, how you work, I think.
So, hit the comments below. Tell us what you think about Move. Is that something that you're likely to want to get into if you're a live user, or if you're not a live user? Does it sort of make you want to get one? I don't know. Tell us all about that. Obviously, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And we'll see you soon for some more gear demos. So until then, bye.
Thanks.